Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And I'm proud to say that that world welcomes diverse perspectives on a wide range of topics. Now I know that's risky these days. The very word diverse often invites all kinds of toxic rhetoric. Doesn't matter if you're talking politics, pop culture, or pizza toppings. Trolls, grifters, and assholes will find a way to derail the conversation. For that reason, and plenty others, I'm generally reluctant to discuss politics on this channel. But at the same time, I do follow other channels that are overtly political. Now, I still don't consider myself an overly political person, but I do think it's important to stay socially engaged, even if it means dealing with people who hold views you find repugnant. But with this video, I don't intend to dive headfirst into the YouTube political scene. But I do want to contribute something meaningful. I also hope that this gets people talking and thinking about certain issues in a new way, because that's how you have productive discussions in politics. And I feel like we need a lot more of that these days, because the inspiration for this video is largely a reaction to a trend I've noticed on many political debates. And at the heart of many of those debates is capitalism. Now, when I say capitalism, I know that evokes all sorts of ideas, images, and concepts. Yes, capitalism does have a dictionary definition. If you look it up on Wikipedia, this is what you get. An economic system based on the private ownership of means of production and their operation for profit. Now that is exceedingly basic. There's so much complexity and nuance to capitalism as a philosophy, an ideology, and a system that's operating in the real world right now. And the way it plays out in theory rarely matches how it manifests in the real world. Because of that, political discussions tend to get messy, and ugly, and heated, but not for the right reasons. This brings me to the heart of that trend I mentioned earlier. It's been manifesting in various YouTube channels and communities in recent years. And a lot of it centers on the biggest flaws in the current global capitalist order, as they often call it. Now, to be fair, some of those flaws are very real, as are the impacts they incur on people, societies, and governments. Some YouTube channels and media personalities dedicate their entire platform to criticizing and deconstructing capitalism to its core. They'll go so far as to say that capitalism as we know it is destroying the planet and killing people every day. Is that rhetoric hyperbolic? Yes, I'd certainly say so, but it also misses the bigger picture. Now, conversely, there are plenty of other YouTube channels and personalities that counter that rhetoric, loudly celebrating the merits of capitalism. They'll dedicate hours to debating and deconstructing every minute criticism and counter-narrative, with or without funding from libertarian think tanks and oil billionaires. I've seen so many videos and articles from both sides. And while I'm not smart enough to make sense of it all, it did get me thinking more deeply about capitalism, as well as socialism, communism, and all the other isms that come up in these discussions. In doing so, I realize there's a part of the debate that rarely gets fleshed out. And this brings me to why I'm making this particular video. Because after taking in and engaging in many of these debates, I'd like to offer a different perspective. To do that, I'm going to present a thought experiment that I'd like everyone to attempt, regardless of their political or ideological leanings. I'll frame it as a simple challenge. Contemplate a genuinely viable alternative to the current capitalist system. What does it entail, and where do you fit within it? Take a moment to think about that. Pause this video if you have to. Really contemplate an actual alternative to the current economic system you're living in right now. Don't just imagine a perfect system that could only work in a utopian fantasy land. Picture something that could actually exist in the real world if enough people committed to building the necessary institutions. This, I feel, is the part of the capitalism/politics debate that needs more nuance. Because let's face it, it's easy to criticize and denigrate something, be it socio-political systems or the latest Star Wars movie. After all, we live in an imperfect world filled with imperfect people enduring imperfect situations. You don't have to look too hard to find a particular instance where capitalism does a lot of harm or a lot of good. what you tend to criticize or defend often varies in accord with your political leanings. And if you identify as conservative, you're more inclined to defend capitalism. It tends to have many positive connotations, conjuring ideas of free markets, innovative businesses, and hardworking people earning their lot in life, all striving and providing for themselves, their families, and their country. But if you identify as liberal, you're more inclined to criticize capitalism and its various failings. When you think capitalism, you think sweatshop working conditions, wealthy elites, and large swaths of people being helplessly exploited for profit, corrupting institutions at all levels from government to the media. Those attitudes tend to change even more depending on age, race, religion, and overall background. On top of that, your general experiences may impact your view. If you've ever been screwed out of money or underpaid for a job you hate, then of course you're not going to see the capitalist system in a very favorable light. Conversely, if you're rich and successful within the current system, you're probably going to be in favor of it, regardless of what you call it. And, believe it or not, all sides do have merit on some levels. Now, that's not me making a political statement. That's just me acknowledging the complexities and imperfections of any human endeavor. It's bound to have successes, failures, and everything in between. Singling out just a few elements to criticize or defend capitalism, however you define it, it just misses the bigger picture. But at what point do we stop arguing over the particulars? At what point in a debate do we take a step back from our grievances and imagine something else? I feel like that's something that needs to happen in any debate. Because if you can't see outside the current situation, then it's much harder to imagine solutions. And make no mistake, our current system has a lot of room for improvement. That's one thing most people agree on, regardless of their political leanings. But what form could those solutions take? The traditional knee-jerk reaction is to think that the only alternative to capitalism is some form of communism or socialism. Personally, I think that's bullshit. And since those terms are so emotionally charged, I think they're not useful in these discussions. For this thought experiment, I encourage everyone to forget the labels, forget all the theories, philosophies, and isms often associated with economic and political systems. Don't think about this as an academic. Think about it as an ordinary, imperfect person with a normal, imperfect life. What is your life like within that system? How do you go about meeting your basic needs within it? Needs like food, water, shelter, safety, and social bonds. And how do you go about providing these needs to all those who are at a significant disadvantage due to injury, age, or ability? How do you go about improving your situation, whatever it might be? Is there a mechanism for doing so? And what does it entail? How do you go about work, hobbies, or careers? What are the incentives within this system? How are they structured? And even if they're sufficient for you, do you think they're sufficient for others? And how do you go about producing goods within that system? How do you go about protecting your personal property, be it your home or your works of art? How do you go about buying things, building wealth, or resolving conflicts with others? What are the laws, limits, and restrictions within this system? And how enforceable are they? These are all complicated questions with uncertain answers, but they should still be asked as well as discussed. That's something I don't think happens enough in these debates. It's a major point of contention that I have with those same YouTube channels I mentioned earlier, the ones dedicated to criticizing or defending capitalism. Even when they make valid points, they stop short of prescribing a solution. Some will reduce that solution to vote for this, don't support that, or spread awareness of insert particular source of outrage. There's rarely an attempt to offer specific solutions. Now, I understand that certain situations don't have easy solutions. Some solutions just aren't possible in the real world due to the nature of politics and people. But that shouldn't stop us from contemplating a better way of doing things. Because without that, all we're really doing is whining. Like it or not, we live in an unfair world. And because humans are so imperfect, it's always going to be unfair on some level. No human being can imagine a perfect system that works for every single individual on this planet. And even if they could, there's just no way it could be implemented long term. But we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good, nor can we let frustrating shortcomings keep us from making real improvements in the world. We should certainly be ready to criticize whatever system we're living in at any given moment. Whether it's capitalism, socialism, communism, or some messy hodgepodge blend, we must acknowledge those flaws. And we must make an effort to fix them. But we just can't do that if we're not willing to think of a better way. And I hope this thought experiment inspires that to some degree. I also hope it adds some nuance to future discussions about politics surrounding people, capitalism, and how we go about living our lives in this crazy world. If you have some insights you'd like to share, please do so in the comments. And if you have another thought experiment you'd like to pitch, please share that as well. We should all be open to new ideas, especially when they challenge us to imagine a better world. Not a perfect world, just a better world. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.